Informed Sources is made possible in part by Susie and Pierre G. Villery.
With a lifetime of passion for public television, we are pleased to help underwrite Informed Sources.
Please join us in supporting WYES-TV.
Hello, I'm Marcia Cavanaugh. Thanks so much for joining us. Well, we all remember the Saints playoff game and the referee's infamous no call. Well, this week, a Saints coach made a call, and it was not what we wanted to hear. We'll be discussing Sean Payton's decision as well as other questions pending, including the status of riverfront development, what to expect from new political districts, and teachers feeling frustrated in a COVID world. We'll also look at the late Edwin Edwards controversial will decision and the beginning today of mobile sports betting. Joining us are tonight's Informed Sources, Errol Laborde, producer of Informed Sources, Doug Mouton, sports director, WWL-TV Channel 4, Don Ostrom, Channel 12's Future Watch reporter, and Tyler Bridges, reporter, the Times-Picayune, the New Orleans Advocate. And we go on over to Doug first, because the news that we did not want to hear, and it came this week.
Yeah, it was difficult news. Look, Sean Payton, to put into words the job he did in New Orleans, you almost have to be a New Orleanian who's over 50 years old and remember what was horrible football until Jim Mora got here, and the football got better in the 80s and then early 90s, but what Sean Payton did coming off of Katrina, getting here for that 2006 season, the brilliant offensive play caller and play designer. He changed modern NFL football in a lot of ways. The way he used running backs. He used 3 running backs in that 2009 season leading up to the Super Bowl. No team did that before. The way he split out Reggie Bush outside. Every team does that now. People weren't doing that before. The way he used Jimmy Graham as a tight end, splitting him out outside, using him all over the place. Everybody does that now. Nobody did that before. And then the most recent one, the way he used Taysom Hill. Now everyone's looking for this big quarterback type that can run. He innovative, fun football. Obviously the winningest coach in Saints history. Wins a Super Bowl here, which many of us never thought we'd see. Mm-hmm. And now after 16 seasons, and it's 16 seasons of the Sean Payton era. Remember one year he didn't actually coach because of the Bounty Gate thing. Right. So he actually coached 15 years, So if you hear 15 or 16, they're sort of both right. And now Sean Payton is out. The biggest reason he gave was that he was burnt out, although he didn't use those words, that he had sort of had enough. And I think all of us who've been through COVID, if you don't understand the feeling of just needing a break right now at this unique point in human history, then you've probably been living on a different planet. So certainly I think everybody gets it. I think, Marcia, you said it perfectly. It is a sad day because I think all of us who were here before Sean Payton got here know that this era, we may not get another one like this again. Hopefully we will. But this era was just spectacular.
Hey, Doug, listening to his press conference, which was long. I mean, he spoke for a long time. This is a different guy. This wasn't the rigid coach. This was the guy who was rambling and just talking about different things. And one of my favorite lines was he was talking about on the day of the game, going to the Dome Stadium and seeing all the people tailgating and thinking, they're the ones having the fun, not me. I want to have fun.
Yeah, actually his exact line, and that was absolutely one of my favorite lines too, Errol, and I had never been to a 90-minute press conference before. It was an ultra marathon by press conference sakes. He said, as he was driving by, he thought to himself, they're not worried about third down. So many things that he would have to worry about. And yeah, I think he just wants to drink in life a little bit. We hear a ton of stories about seeing Sean Payton and his wife out at New Orleans restaurants. He really genuinely seems to enjoy the city, and I think he wants to taste a little bit of life for a year or two. I do fully expect him to be an NFL head coach again, but I think he's going to take at least 2 years off before he does that. And yeah, the press conference was long, and that was the most unguarded that we've ever seen Sean Payton, the one who was completely out of coach mode. And that was my one biggest takeaway, was that he seemed like a guy who was at peace with his own decision, that he was good with this own decision. He didn't seem conflicted in any way. He seemed happy, looking forward, and stepping away.
Well, certainly he did bring a lot to this town, and we wish him all the best. But he's definitely telegraphing that he wouldn't mind a TV job.
Yeah, but there were a few moments that you could tell he had put little asterisks by, I got to make sure to say this. And one of them was, I haven't heard from any TV networks yet, but I think I'd be pretty good at that if anyone wants to call. My guess is his agent probably already had, but certainly if they hadn't before the announcement was made Tuesday, they have. Look, Sean Payton's going to be terrific on TV. When he wants to, he can break down football in a way that's really interesting. And for a football aficionado, you can really learn stuff from Sean Payton. I think he'll be really good on TV. And look, John Madden stepped away from coaching to do TV and wound up never going back. I do think Sean Payton will go back, but I also think he's going to enjoy doing TV and being away from football.
Doug, is there any chance that Sean Payton was going to go for your job?
No, local TV sports, I think he's shooting a little higher than the Mouton standard.
But the Saints went through so many seasons where they got close, where they went deep into January, and then there was like the January heartbreak, the no call, the Minnesota miracle. Even this year, if I can imagine, it's really hard on the coach to go through all that, going back to spring training, going that far, having such high hopes, and then at the end just to kind of lose out.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And look, Sean Payton's one of those guys, and in his process, I mean, they put in sleeping quarters at the Saints facility so they wouldn't have to go home. So when they work till 2 and need to get up at 8, they don't have to waste the time of driving home. They can just sleep there. Sean Payton said that was his process. He said people along the way would say, why don't you change your process and not stay up all night and designing offenses? And he said, well, this is what works for me. It's the only way I know how to do it. So for him, cutting back could have never worked. It was being full bore and going all in was his only way to get it done, and the only way to get away from that was to not do it anymore.
So what's next for the Saints?
Well, I would say at this point it is about a 90% chance. That's where I'd put the odds, since we're going to be talking about betting in a little while, that Dennis Allen will be the next head coach for a lot of reasons. One, he has put the skins on the wall. Now, he was part of Sean Payton's original staff in 2006. He left, became the head coach of the Raiders, where he did not have success, came back, and when he came back to the Saints defense was a mess. He turned it around. The Saints got better on defense. The job he did in his second stint in New Orleans was spectacular. If you remember, he got an audition in Tampa when Sean Payton was out with COVID. It was the Saints' best game of the year. They were terrific, and they won. He has the skins on the wall. He is part of the culture. And if you listen to Mickey Loomis, who had a media Zoom conference on Friday, if you listen to Mickey Loomis, they believe that the culture they have in place is good. They believe they have a lot of pieces in place. It certainly makes sense. Now, they also said they're going to go through the process. They've already got a few assistant coaches, other places lined up for interviews. Aaron Glenn, who coached with the Saints under Dennis Allen, is now the defensive coordinator in Detroit. He'll get an interview. Brian Flores, the terrific head coach at Miami, who was the biggest surprise that got fired. He's another defensive coach. He'll interview Byron Leftwich, who's the offensive coordinator in Tampa Bay, won a Super Bowl last year. I think all of those guys will get head coaching jobs in the next 2 years. And I think the Saints may interview other guys. Eric Bieniemy, the offensive coordinator in Kansas City, who's a New Orleans native. They can't interview now because he's still involved in the playoffs. I think there'll be names come up, but I still think Dennis Allen, for all the reasons of continuity and what they have built, and they believe in what they've built, and I know they like Dennis Allen. One of the things I did after Sean Payton's thing was done, and sort of in the time between newscasts, was I went and talked to different people in the organization, but more low-level people, just people who are in that press conference, just to say, what do you guys think about Dennis Allen in this building? Dennis Allen is an enormously popular person from top to bottom in that building, and I think he'll be the next guy.
Okay, well, we shall see. And thanks to Sean Payton for everything he did for this community. Have some fun now. Don't have to worry about third downs anymore.
Right.
Okay, all righty. Let's go on over to you, Tyler. Riverfront development. There's a lot that's going on. Some that was put on hold because of COVID, but other things are just sort of moving forward.
Yeah, the COVID did slow some things down, but if you go from Jackson Avenue upriver to Poland Avenue by the Industrial Canal, there's all sorts of things that are going on. One thing that did move forward over the last couple of years was the Four Seasons Hotel is now open. They got a couple restaurants, they got hotel rooms, they got private residences. Right next to that is the ferry terminal, which has now been demolished, and they're building a new one that's supposed to be open by the end of the year. And also next to that is the Aquarium of the Americas. They're undergoing a renovation, updating, getting rid of the IMAX theater and moving the butterfly garden and an insectarium over from the U.S. Customs House. There's a big vacant lot right next to the Hilton, in between the Hilton and the Convention Center, that's known as the Whale Lot because of the murals on the wall there. Maybe a hotel would go up there. The Riverwalk is there. The Convention Center, they're in the midst of spending $550 million to upgrade that facility. And then you go right upriver from the Convention Center. There's a lot of vacant land, 39 acres exactly. And a private developer has been selected to try to turn that into a thriving commercial and residential neighborhood. So, Marcia, lots of things are going along on the riverfront.
So you were talking about the vacant lot, the vacant space, what we call the Whale Lot, and not far from that also is Spanish Plaza. I wanted to ask you about Spanish Plaza. What's happening there with the Spanish Fountain, with the big fountain there in the Spanish Plaza?
Yeah, the fountain is back working. I know that area well because I jogged through it. I will say that the brick resurfacing they did is not the best. I hope somebody in the city is listening and will deal with that. But really the biggest question mark that remains, at least at this point, is that the city took possession of the wharves at Governor Nichols and Esplanade. And so on one hand you have the Moonwalk that's been there for a long time. And then downriver from those two wharves you have the Crescent Park that's a beautiful but underutilized park. And so in between you've got these truck terminals that are truck containers right there at the Governor Nichols and Esplanade Wharf.
Yeah.
Sorry. And the city has extended the lease for the private company that is operating there, but it's supposed to move out, that company, and allow the city has $15 million to begin work on converting those two wharves into parkland that would then allow 3 miles of continuous parkland for people to jog or bike or whatever right there along that historic riverfront.
So we did see some interruption, like I think COVID had a play on what happened with those wharves, but things are picking up though, right? Those projects that maybe were delayed are still on board and going forward?
Yeah, there's really probably more going on in that historic section of the riverfront probably in the last 30 years since Waldenburg Park was developed in the original aquarium and Jack's Brewery. But again, the biggest issue right out now is what is the city going to come up with for the Governor Nichols and Esplanade wharves? Okay.
All righty, Tyler. We'll be looking for it. There's already a lot to do around the New Orleans riverfront, but a whole lot more coming.
Yes.
Right. Thanks a lot. Okie doke. Errol, let's go on over to you. Special session coming up in the legislature for redistricting.
Comes up February 1st, by law, February 1st until February 20th. And it's not like they haven't been thinking about this and drawing up plans. This is something you have to do constitutionally every 10 years, especially with the congressional seats. The congressional seats are going to really be the big issue. There are 6 congressional seats in Louisiana. 30% of the population is black, and so there's a real movement to get a second black majority congressional seat. Now, by law, all of the congressional seats in the state have to be divided evenly, not necessarily by race, but certainly by percentage. But the fact is, race is going to be the overriding consideration. It's a major factor. The one congressional district is the New Orleans area district, which is Orleans up the river toward Baton Rouge. But there will be another one created. So the question is, where do you create it? And when you create another one, then you're taking away from what would be a white majority district. The thinking seems to be it's going to be upstate. The population pattern in Louisiana now is showing a real decline in upstate Louisiana. And the growth is in the New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and North Shore area. So the feeling is that probably the 4th and 5th congressional districts, which is roughly Shreveport to Monroe, that they'll be combined into one. One's represented by a guy from Shreveport named Mike Johnson, and the other is represented by a woman from Monroe, Julia Letlow. Now, Julia Letlow, we remember that huge tragedy when her husband was elected to Congress, and then before he could be sworn in, he died of COVID, and so she won a special election. So she's the junior member of the congressional delegation. On the other hand, people say, hey, look, she's a woman. She's the only Republican woman that we've ever had in Louisiana, and so we don't want to be in a position to want to say that she goes. But anyway, probably that state's going to be combined in the new Congressman. Now, Governor Edwards is supporting this. He said all along that he supports having the second black majority district. The people who are drawing up the rules, there's the majority is the Republicans in the legislature, and so it's Republicans who are drawing up the rules, but Edwards has the veto power, and his veto power is such that the Republicans are not in a position to override him. So Edwards is going to be very, very influential in what happens to this.
Errol, let me just jump in if I could here for a moment. I think what we're going to see the Republicans design in the legislature is they're going to keep basically the same configuration with 5 Republicans and 1 Democrat. And then my guess the next step is that the governor would veto that. Then the question would be whether the Republicans in the legislature can override the governor, and that would be an uphill battle for them. And then it would probably go to the courts, and we'll see what ends up happening. But clearly the Republicans who are in control of the state legislature do not want to create a second Democratic district in this state for Congress.
But the feeling is that they can't override it either. And also, there's political considerations. Elections coming up, that some of the people who are drawing up the lines also have statewide ambitions, and so don't want to be seen as being in the way of reform. And so I think the pushes could definitely be in terms of that second seat.
Okay.
I couldn't imagine it being eventually overturned.
Starts in February.
Right. No, February 1st.
Yeah, all righty. Thanks a lot, E. Dawn, let's go on over to you. And COVID has really caused big problems for some teachers.
It's caused a lot of problems for a lot of us, and I think we all keep thinking, well, it's over, or it's peaking, or we're getting to the end of it. And I got a really almost rude wake-up call this week. It was a lovely letter written by my daughter's English teacher saying, I can't do it anymore, I have to quit. It was sent to her students saying, I love you, I love teaching, but since August, I haven't had more than 3 weeks of consistent childcare for my own 2 young children. So I cannot come to work with my high schoolers while my 3- and 4-year-old keep going to school, getting exposed to COVID, coming home, being quarantined, being retested, going to school 48 hours later to find out that they have to be quarantined again. She said she tried nanny shares, she tried different daycares, and nothing works, and her mental health is just out, and she's quit. And she is certainly not alone in this. I'm told by the Louisiana Federation of Teachers that the retirements and departures of school personnel rose 25% from 2020 to 2021. They're just getting burned out. The teachers' unions say usually you hear about teacher burnout close to the end of the year. This year we were about 3 weeks in before everybody was just exhausted and done. And part of that is because not only are you having to teach virtually and in person and deal with mask mandates and new rules all the time, but you're also there then covering for other teachers who are out with COVID or out with childcare issues due to COVID. They can't say how many people have burned out and quit because of COVID burnout, but they say that the numbers are even higher than they already were. Mix in Hurricane Ida, and you've got serious stress on your hands. Teachers depend on that planning time, the time off between classes to plan or to grade papers, and they're not getting it because they are being called in to cover for those other teachers who aren't there. I know one of my son's teachers told me last year, we talk about screen time and how dangerous it is for kids. Well, when we're teaching virtually, we're on a screen at least 8 hours a day staring at that screen, and then when we go to grade papers, because we're virtual, everything's submitted to us digitally, so that therefore is then on a screen. And everything we're spending 12 hours a day on a screen, and people were suffering from headaches that had never had headaches before and eye issues. So it just continues to to roll, and new teachers aren't going into the profession at the levels that they were before either. So there's definitely been a wake-up call of the very valuable work, as if we all shouldn't have known that before, that teachers are doing, but how hard it is to recruit new ones in this current scenario.
It must impact training teachers too. I mean, if you can't get into the classroom with the students, that's the way many teachers, upcoming teachers prepare for it. That has to have an impact.
Right. If you can't get the student-teacher training, and you can't get in, and you can't experience real-life teaching, it has a huge impact. So this is nothing that's going to go away this year or next year. We are in a teacher shortage. If you are in school for teaching, the jobs are plentiful for you, and hopefully more people will be drawn to the profession because of that. But it's definitely not an easy time to be a teacher in Louisiana or anywhere else.
Yeah, really, definitely. Okay, Don, thanks a lot. Tyler, back on over to you, and a change. Well, I don't know so much about a change, but we found out more about Edwin Edwards' will.
Yeah, it was recently disclosed that 93-year-old Edwin Edwards, in a handwritten will, left all of his assets to his 8-year-old son. I think another state, I'd have to repeat what I just said, but people in Louisiana are sort of accustomed to that kind of information with Edwin Edwards. But yeah, so and Edwin Edwards also has 4 older children who are in their 60s and 70s, and one of them, Victoria, who's 70 years old, has been saying that she deserves a cut of his will because she can't take care of herself financially, and that her father has been supporting herself for years. So. I think the older children, except Victoria, are fine with the fact that Edwin Edwards apparently is leaving everything to his 8-year-old son, but one of them, Victoria, is contesting, saying under the state's forced heirship law, she should get some amount of those assets.
So she's going to court with this.
Right, right. So, there is absolutely no love lost between the 4 older Edwards children and Edwards' widow, who is his third wife, Trina, who's 43 years old.
Right. So what are we hearing from Trina about, this latest dispute that's arisen?
Right. She, in her mind, what Victoria, in trying to get some of the assets of her father, is trying to take money away from Eli, who is 8 years old. So Eli lives with his mother in Gonzales.
Okay, and so when we're talking about, what is part of this estate, and there's the house that we're talking about, and any other assets that would be involved too, do you know?
There's no deduct box. I don't believe there's a deduct box. We don't know exactly what former Governor Edwards has left behind in his will. That's been sealed, but I do know he spent a lot of money on his trial where he ended up getting convicted, so there may be less money than people expect.
Yeah, really, and it's really up to that family. Of course, like you said, there was no love lost. The older children were not happy about the fact that Edward's body was exhumed and cremated.
Yeah, that was the decision of Trina in October, and the older children were very upset that they said that Edwin Edwards had never wanted to be cremated. But that decision was hers after he had been buried. Okay, well, as I said, that's their business basically, so good luck to them on it. All right, thanks a lot, Tyler. And let's wrap up with you, Doug. And mobile sports betting starts today.
It is here, and Louisiana voted for this. Each individual parish, if you remember, voted individually on whether or not they wanted to be able to cast sports bet. All of the parishes in the New Orleans TV, if you're watching this on TV, your parish voted yes. Now, there's geofencing technology, so in theory, for instance, I live in St. Tammany Parish. I can only place a bet if I'm within a parish that voted yes to sports betting. So if I go on vacation to Pensacola, in theory, I won't be able to cast that bet. Now, I haven't tested that yet, but that's the way it's supposed to work. You're only supposed to be able to bet in a parish that said yes. Again, all of our parishes in the New Orleans area said yes to this. The way it's going to play out is the first people allowed to apply for this digital right to be able to do mobile sports betting were the land-based casino and the riverboat casinos in Louisiana, and they could each come up with a digital partner if they chose to help. So we are seeing the initial wave of digital options, and they're already out there beginning today. We could potentially see a lot more. The point is, sports betting is here. You can make sports bets now on your phone, and in the near future, there are going to be a whole lot more options for making sports bets on your phone. Whether or not you want to do it, it's what Louisiana, the parishes that voted yes, those people will have the option to do it, and they will have the option to do it right now.
But it's been in place. I mean, sports betting, but you had to do it in person until today. Now you can do it digitally.
Correct. You could do it in person, which is the way it was in Mississippi, and that was the way Louisiana felt like it was getting a leg up on Mississippi. Was Mississippi, you had to do it in person. In Louisiana, initially in person, but then yes, they were going to be able to have a digital partner. And I say digital because it's across all digital platforms and online. And so yes, Louisiana, that is the hope, that how it would be bigger and maybe generate more tax revenue is that you would be able to do it. Obviously, it's easier to do it on your phone than it is to actually drive to a casino and do it there. It makes common sense that you would see, and states that have it digitally, there's a lot more money coming in than states that only do it in casinos.
So the state will get some money out of it.
And the state will get some tax money. I think Tyler knows more about that end of it than I do, but yes, the state will benefit in some way from it, yes.
Big windfall, Tyler, from it, do you think?
I think the studies are that it will be less money than maybe people are expecting.
I see. Okay, well, we'll see how it goes. All righty, on to other stories. E, to you.
Announcement came out today that the Omicron virus numbers are leveling, which is something that had been predicted for a while, and now apparently it's happening. And so if that holds, that's good news.
Indeed it is. Dawn?
The winter that seems to have gripped us is continuing. There's a big blizzard heading to the northeast, and along with that, we're getting temperatures in the 30s again this weekend. So
I know.
Watch your pets, plants, pipes, and all that good stuff.
I know. It's actually felt like winter. Tyler, over to you.
Yeah, I want to follow up on Errol was talking about redistricting. Not only will the legislators be redistricting for the U.S. Congress seats, but also for all state House seats and state Senate seats, also the State Board of Education, even the Supreme Court. And again, with Republicans in control of the redistricting, they're going to be trying to draw maps to elect as many Republicans as possible. And as Errol mentioned, the governor will be ready with his veto if he thinks they go too far.
All right, will be interesting to see. Doug, wrap it up.
Well, the Pelicans right now, believe it or not, as bad as they started, 10 teams in the Western Conference make the playoffs. The Pelicans right now are 11th. Zion Williamson hasn't played a game yet. He put out an Instagram post of himself in a Pelicans uniform. Hopefully that means we're going to see some Zion. It would be fun to see a little playoff run. Pelicans roughly 50 games into an 82-game season. It would be nice to see him over the last 20 games or so. Pelicans got a shot at the playoffs. That would be fun for the spring coming up.
Okay, I hope they make it. All right, guys, thank you so much for being here. Thank you all for joining us. See you again next week for Informed Sources. Have a good evening. Bye.
Informed Sources is made possible in part by Susie and Pierre G. Villery.
With a lifetime of passion for public television, we are pleased to help underwrite Informed Sources.
Please join us in supporting WYES-TV.